We want our customers to be able to get anything they want exactly when they need it and only pay for the amount of time that they're actually using it. A lot of our orders are delivered via door-to-door courier delivery. So the experience is kind of like DoorDash, but for clothes.
Welcome to Partner Path, a podcast that unpacks the venture capital and growth equity ecosystem from a junior perspective. Young entrepreneurs and investors have already had a massive impact on the industry, having started unicorns and launched billion-dollar funds. We discuss these success stories and more by sharing perspectives and advice from some of the industry's most prominent role models. This podcast expresses our views as of the date published and does not represent the views of and is not endorsed by any company for which we work. Before we get to the episode, Laura and I are excited to announce a partnership with Overlap. Fresh out of Y Combinator's summer batch, Overlap is an AI-driven app that uses large language models to curate the best moments from podcast episodes. Imagine having a smart assistant who reads through every podcast transcript, finds the best parts or parts most relevant to your search, and strings them together to form a new, curated stream of content. That is what Overlap does. I personally use Overlap to explore content on future podcast guests and highly recommend it as another diligence tool for investors. Check out Overlap on the App Store today.
Today we are chatting with Julia and Brian, the founders of Pickle, a peer-to-peer clothing rental marketplace for consumers. With tens of thousands of combined renters and owners and 2,000 plus brands, Pickle continues to see double-digit month-over-month growth in GMV. Welcome, Julia and Brian.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Okay, let's go back to Blackstone where you both met before leaving to pursue your founder journeys. What pain point did you guys see at Blackstone that led you to start Pickle?
So we pivoted into what the business currently is, which is now a rental marketplace from a social polling platform. So the pain point we saw at the time was we thought there could be a better way to crowdsource opinions, and that's what we were going for. Clearly, we didn't do it that well since we were kind of forced into a pivot, but really happy with the direction everything went. And I think at the time we were just really excited to start a company. We both had some entrepreneurial experience from college, whether it was classes or just kind of ideating with friends and things like that. So just thought it might be a good time.
But then when picking your co-founder, that can be tricky. How did you two know that you were the right people to work together?
Yeah, so one of the things that a lot of investors actually really liked about us is that we had previous working experience. So we worked on the same team for a couple of years at Blackstone together and just knew that we worked really well together, which was really nice. So as we were having those conversations with early investors, that was something that they called out as it's great to know how you work together so that when things get really tough, you're going to work through it. So we always enjoyed working together at Blackstone. And, when it came time to do something, it just made a lot of sense to pair up.
Yeah, and we also had similar backgrounds and interests and work ethic. We were both D1 athletes, which was fun. Brian played football, I played lacrosse, and I think we had a lot of perseverance from that kind of thing and discipline. So that has been a great way for us to be very aligned on overall, we're going to give it 110% all the time, and that makes it easy to work together.
How would you describe each of your working styles?
It's a great question. Julia can sometimes be a little chaotic with her working style, which is crazy because she sometimes won't take notes or there's a million things going on, but she never forgets anything. And anything that we talk about in a meeting is always just like perfectly logged in her brain, which is always kind of wild for me. So
Brian's much more organized and disciplined. It's like the kind of the opposite or complementary. I think my brain is thinking about a lot of different things as yours, but you just do a better job, I think, presenting it in a super organized way. And that's CEO for you.
Yeah, I think we're the same. And then, okay, the name Pickle. It doesn't necessarily scream like clothing brand. So where did it come from?
It's if you're in a pickle and you need a last minute outfit, then you can use our service to get it.
It's almost like you got a rehearse.
Yeah.
That was good.
People ask us all the time, and it's fun. People love hearing about it. So we get, we're talking to customers all the time. We get to see them in person in our West Village store. We're always doing user interviews, and people love to always ask that question, so we answer it quite often.
We wanted something fun that could also be turned into a verb and something that people would remember. I think we both had some friends at the time that were starting companies, and they did the combine two words into one name, and we just were always forgetting what their companies were called, which is why we just wanted to go something very simple that everyone would remember. Pickle is a rental marketplace. It's kind of like an Airbnb, but for things that you own. So we started with women's clothing and accessories, and we'll eventually expand out into other categories. The things we focus on are supply. So we want to have the trendiest, most in-demand supply, and we really have that on the platform right now. And our job is to improve the accessibility of it. So whether it's something that's too expensive to justify a purchase for 1 or 2 time wear, we make it a lot more affordable to rent. It's typically around 10 to 20% of the retail price to rent something. And then, or if it's something that's just so trendy, it's sold out everywhere else, you can still access it on Pickle. Another thing we focus on is convenience. So we want our customers to be able to get anything they want exactly when they need it and only pay for the amount of time that they're actually using it. A lot of our orders are delivered via door-to-door courier delivery. So the experience is kind of like DoorDash, but for clothes. And sometimes our customers will order something and 20 minutes later it arrives at their door. So the whole experience is, instead of going to your closet to pick something out, you just go to your front door and grab it off your front door. We also do shipping and in-person handoffs. And then the last thing is community. So just really building a safe, trusting community of users. And yeah, that's pretty much what it is. And then
Yeah, for our target demographic, right now we're focused on women. 18 to 35 is kind of the age range. I wouldn't say it's constricted to that, but we do see our user demographic kind of peak in the mid to late 20s and early 30s. And then we'll be expanding beyond there. We'll go into men's fashion at some point too, which Brian is very excited about.
And how are you reaching or finding these consumers?
Yes. So right now we are mostly organic growth and word of mouth. So that's 70 to 80% of our monthly growth and new users are acquired just by referrals and people talking about it with their friends. What's nice about the tangible aspect of the marketplace is it's easy for people to say, oh, I love what you're wearing. Where did you get it? And then they can talk about Pickle. Or if someone's having a great side hustle experience, they can say, oh, this is the way that I'm making money off these wedding guest dresses that I'm only going to wear one time, or I'm only wearing once this season.
You mentioned Airbnb. I'd love to maybe talk about some of the similarities or potential learnings that you guys have had or explored through other peer-to-peer marketplaces. Airbnb is a great example. Obviously, Brian Chesky had a famously hard time raising a seed round, and he's sent out the 6 or 7 rejection emails that he got, which is pretty funny to read through in hindsight. But Uber is obviously another great example, both very well-known companies today. Could you just kind of talk through if there's anything you've learned from those stories, and if so, what?
There's definitely a lot. I mean, we've spent a lot of time researching and just reading the stories of those companies. One, because it's good for our business to know them, but also because they're obviously really interesting stories. So things from Airbnb, definitely around supply and the quality of the supply and how much that matters, as well as how much the community and the trust aspect really matters. From Uber, I think we learned a lot about how to expand into new markets. Uber is very localized, similar to us. While we do provide the shipping option, and people definitely take advantage of that outside of some of the core markets that we're focusing on right now, which are New York and LA. The magic moment really happens when it's a local exchange, whether you're meeting up with someone in person or it's just dropped right at your door. So we definitely study what those companies did at our stage. I think a lot of marketplaces probably have difficulty raising early on because you really have to show retention, and that takes a while to prove to investors. So I know we got a lot of this is looking like, great early signal, but would love to circle back once you have, 12 months, 13 months of data. So, it definitely took us a while.
Yes, it did.
But you did it.
We did it.
Yeah, you did raise a seed round, which congratulations. I'd love to maybe just double click on quickly the trust element, because I think, as you mentioned, that was something that was, I think, a barrier for a lot of investors to get over is, will people want to get in strangers' cars? Mm-hmm. And you guys obviously have to deal with a very similar element with wearing other people's clothing. How has that been top of mind, or how have you been able to get around that kind of stigma around something like that?
I think that there's other companies such as Airbnb, Uber, and then other companies in the clothing rental marketplace that broke down a lot of those barriers for us, which was really nice. And so people just got used to the sharing economy over the last several years. And that wasn't as much of a consideration early on. I think the main considerations are around just the quality, and if you're wearing someone else's clothes, similar to going to someone else's house, it's is this going to be a good experience for me? So that's where we definitely learned a lot from Airbnb in terms of rating and review systems and empowering our owners or our lenders to operate their closet sort of as a business, where you want good ratings, you want good reviews, you want to be talking to users that reach out and say, hey, how does this fit? Can you provide more details? Things like that. Early on, we built a lot of the tools to do those things, and it definitely helped with our customer acquisition.
There are a couple other P2P in the clothing space. I think you mentioned, or we've mentioned before, a business like StockX or ThreadUp. Have you learned anything from kind of the more clothing-specific P2P marketplaces that comes top of mind?
Some of the similar quality concerns, we don't look at those other businesses a ton. I think we're pretty different. A lot of those businesses, they're trying to get rid of something. Ours, you're trying to hold on to it. You're just achieving value while it's an underutilized asset. So it's something that's just sitting in your closet, and now you're able to monetize that, as opposed to some of the other secondhand marketplaces are more, I've gotten value out of this. I'm now looking to move on from it, or I'm doing a closet clean out. Let me see how much I can get from this. Or if it's, a platform like StockX where people are buying it more as investment pieces, it's still, I guess, fairly different from what we're doing.
Yeah, got it. Very fair.
Have you guys found any parts of the marketplace where maybe it's like broken down and so you iterate or learn from the breakdown? For example, the same person keeps ruining the same dresses, or there's some sort of like customer service dispute, or things that would be top of mind if I'm renting out my cult guy bag or something.
One of the benefits of not being able to raise capital for a while is that you do everything yourself early on. So we learned a lot just from being in the weeds on all of this and answering all the customer support inquiries. We did the deliveries ourselves for the first 7 months. So we just talked face to face with customers and heard their feedback. So we've made a lot of improvements over the, course of the last 2 years in terms of the customer experience. And one thing that we're pretty intent on is making sure that we're prioritizing the trust aspect. So if someone is acting malicious, then they're removed immediately. We don't have many strikes in terms of that. We don't see it that much. I'm sure it's something that'll come with scale more often. But yeah, right now it's ensuring quality is our number one priority.
The peer-to-peer aspect also definitely, the tangible part of I'm borrowing something from another person, I think holds people to another level of responsibility and accountability, which is helpful as opposed to thinking about, oh, this is coming from a larger corporation and who cares if something happens to it? Often owners and renters are communicating very clearly with each other on the platform. We have in-app messaging. So if people have questions or concerns about sizing, for example, then they'll message before the rental. If an owner wants to just send an extra special message about, oh, treat this with love and care, they can easily do that as they're DMing people. So that's definitely helpful with that network and community aspect. We also are able to get a ton of feedback from our end users and lenders, especially early days. Like in the early days when we were deciding and figuring out who were we going to kind of empower or have the responsibility of the cleaning on the marketplace, we got overwhelming feedback from our early lenders who said, I want to make sure that my item is clean the way that I want it to be cleaned, whether it's organic dry cleaning or special hand washing. And that also ensures that renters aren't accidentally damaging items. So we do get continuous feedback loops from our users that are super helpful.
I think the word community has become sort of a buzzword in the startup space and the VC space, but it is really important for us, and it helps eliminate a lot of these potential issues.
And creating community is famously difficult too, right? Especially with marketplaces. I think a lot of teams have a hard time getting from 0 to 1 because you have to create demand and supply, right? There are two parts of the business. You have to start at once. Maybe it'd be great to just hear a little bit more about how you guys were able to get your first renters and rentees on the platform. Like, what did you focus on there?
We did everything that you could think of that was not scalable, and that's the first answer that I would say. Our very first closets were some of my friends who I would call and say, I'm going to come over to your apartment and I'm going to photograph you and everything that you own, and we're going to list it on Pickle. I'll help you do it. And that is how we started some of the first closets. I even listed some of my items. I don't have a fashion background. I don't have the best stuff on Pickle. I'm a great renter. I wouldn't say I'm the best lender, although I got my first rental the other day. But we would actually, work with people very hands-on in that sense. And we did that as well with different nano and micro influencers, because we had to think about women that were in the fashion or fashion adjacent space. And often these were people that were taking all those photos in Soho and that were really excited about sharing their different outfits on social media. And so we would go to them as our kind of starting pocket of people that we could focus on supply. So we definitely focused on the supply side first before we could really think about the demand and everything. But it's a balancing act, because if you get all the supply and nobody rents, they're going to churn. So the renting side, there were definitely some friends and people that I would be messaging or I was renting, and we were trying out the marketplace. And even if it started as, hey, I just want you to test this out. This is our very first time we're getting people to use our door-to-door courier service, which was Brian showing up at their apartment. You got to start somewhere. And so that was really helpful. And then we did things that started to help with scale when we thought about, okay, how do we get a higher volume of supply? We took a play from Airbnb and thought about how they helped people get photographs of their homes, and we brought girls to Soho to get pictures of items in their closet, and that was our scrappy way to do that. But then as we started to have those transactions every week, even if it started small, we'd say, we're going to get one more next week, we're going to get 3 more next week, or now we're actually starting to see things grow more steadily. We would then start to see the network effects build out. Even our early users that we would show up at their doors and we'd ask them, how'd you hear about us or everything, they would talk about their friend that had told them about Pickle or who had directly referred them, and we started to see that network really pop up.
One of the things that's unique about our marketplace as opposed to some others is that the supply and the demand can be the same person. So we see a lot of people, about 50% of the people that have listed something are also renting, and the stats the same vice versa. So early on, by focusing on some of these micro and nano influencers, just some of our early adopters are just very fashion forward and fashion excited people. So they would have great stuff that they wanted to upload to be rented out, and they would also be very excited to rent from other people as well. So that definitely made it a little bit easier to solve that chicken and the egg problem, because we're able to solve it with one person as opposed to multiple.
Yeah. Now, a quick word from our sponsor. Laura and I are thrilled to announce a partnership with Grata, an intuitive deal sourcing platform. Keep missing out on private market deals? Ditch the Rolodex and get Grata. Grata's AI-powered platform provides access to accurate data, deep insights, and time-saving workflows that help get more deals done. And it's trusted by over 500 firms and 3,000 deal makers, including myself. I've personally used Grata in both my deal sourcing and diligence workflows and would recommend their tool to any investor across private equity, growth equity, corp dev, or investment banking. Now, back to the episode.
What was the initial hook to get some of these influencers on the platform? You see a lot of the now stars from like The Bachelor, and they're requiring quite a bit of change in their pocket to promote the brand or to use the brand. Was there any hook that incentivized influencers to come to Pickle outside of their closet?
At the very beginning, no. I mean, it really was about making money on the pieces that were in your closet. And we did not start with a lot of these more famous influencers or creators that people know. It started out again with these women that had a couple thousand followers and that just loved posting about their outfits. And those circles run really tight. So they would refer their friends and they would start to talk about it. We were definitely mindful of looking at our new creators or influencers and looking at, did they get a rental yet? Did they have that moment of a little aha, I can actually make money on my closet? Because that would just unleash their uploads, right? So they would start and they'd be like, all right, let me feel out a few items. I'll try to 3 to 5. I'll upload those to my closet. They'd get a rental and they'd be like, ooh, I have another 20 items I'm going to add to my closet. And so that would really help our supply compile. And then eventually we would get enough of these smaller creators or influencers that it started to work up the way of the grapevine to the larger. And those girls also have a really tight network there. So people who are joining our network now are referred directly by some of these influencers. People are like, oh, Kit Keenan told me about it, or Audrey Trellinger. And that's super helpful because those referrals go much further than a DM from us.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. And that aha moment, I think, is so important. Do you guys ever track, like, trying to influence or encourage that aha moment as a way to improve product retention from the supply side?
We do. So on the supply side, we typically would see people come in, they'll upload somewhere between 2 to 4 items right off the bat. And then as soon as they get a rental, they'll just kind of unleash the rest of their closet. I mean, that's been pretty much the same since the very early days. And early on, it was very easy to track because there weren't that many users, there wasn't that much data. So we could see as soon as they would get that rental, we would have a spike in the data, and it's this person that was uploading a bunch of new products, and it's held true to today. And then on the demand side, it's really about just getting someone to view our magic number is 9 products. There's an inflection point in the data in terms of our retention and ability to convert them into a customer after they view 9. So we track those pretty religiously and then do the best that we can to, get someone that rental early on, and then make sure that we're getting someone to view 9 products and really kind of try it out.
And I think the concept of a peer-to-peer marketplace or clothing rental has been tried in New York before. It was definitely before Will and I's time as investors. I know some of the companies haven't or didn't quite find the success that they were hoping for. So I'd love to maybe touch on the why and how you guys are approaching the problem like differently this time and why it's going to work.
Yeah, so there's...
Or it is working.
Right, yeah. Thanks for the correction. Yeah, so there's a couple different reasons. Some of it's timing, some of it's just our approach. The fact that Julia and I weren't fashion people and still really aren't fashion people, I guess.
We tried today.
It definitely helped in terms of our approach because we took a very numbers-based approach to everything and also just kind of did what made sense. We didn't necessarily build something based off of, I would love if this type of thing existed. We just started talking about what would make a lot of sense. And this is just an idea that it makes a lot of sense. And a lot of people have had this idea before. A lot of people have tried this idea before. We get people come up to us all the time and tell us, I thought about this with some friends in college. And it is a fairly obvious idea. It's the difficulty is in the execution. So a couple ways that we approached it that are different. One is based on the local approach to it. So instead of shipping these products all across the US or world or wherever, the local approach allows them to be exchanged much faster. So instead of it taking 3 days for something to get there, you wear it for a day and then you send it back and it takes another 3 days. That's, 7 days of the product being used when it really was only actually being used 1 day. So that helped free up a lot of the really high quality supply for us. And then the second is related to the convenience is there's never been more money poured into last mile logistics and door-to-door delivery, shipping, everything logistics related. So it is never been cheaper. It's never been faster to do a lot of that. So we've definitely taken advantage of that. And that was definitely just a timing thing for us. And I don't know if you have anything to add there.
The only thing I would also add is with our flexible delivery options, it's nice that with the local approach, it truly is an option to choose to pay for convenience to have it delivered right to your door. So when you get to checkout, if you would not like to pay for that convenience, then you can go and exchange it in person with somebody, which is nice because you might be shopping directly in your neighborhood and only filter down to West Village closets, and then you're end up walking less than a mile or a couple blocks away. Or I've even rented from people in my building before, which is crazy. But that's really helpful as opposed to it being, this is a hidden fee that you have to pay for. And then when you think about the time that you might take to go pick something up, you end up being willing to pay for that convenience too.
When you guys are making money by taking a cut of those proceeds?
Yep, so we take a 20% cut of each transaction.
In terms of unit economics, what are key indicators that you guys are looking at measuring yourself on success?
Yeah, so we look at our unit economics based on the order number for each particular renter. So we provide some credits as an incentive to try out the platform on their first rental. So it's just kind of a way to help overcome that trust barrier. And then after that, we're unit economic positive on every order moving forward. I think it's like, somewhere between $1 or $2 on the first one that we'll end up losing. Our biggest thing, and our investors are always kind of preaching this to us, really focus on healthy behavioral economics. So someone that comes on and is only renting because you gave them some massive discount is not going to be a customer that's going to be retained in the long run. And we're essentially just wasting money at that point. So we really focus on, making sure that the experience we're providing, there's this interesting balance between getting them over the edge to actually experiencing it and becoming a repeat customer, but also making sure that we're not giving them just a completely fake experience of, hey, here's a free rental and here's free delivery and all that, and then seeing if they stick around.
Yeah. Reminds me a lot of that app Flip. I don't know if you guys use that.
Our
Maybe we'll have to cut this out.
It was going viral over the weekend. They're like, let's look at Flip's growth strategy and their user acquisition. It's like, they're throwing money at everybody. I don't think this is going to work.
Yeah, I think I spent like $200 free credits on there.
And haven't used it since.
Yeah.
One area that I think would be cool to touch on is just trying to understand capital allocating now that you guys have raised capital. You mentioned you're expanding into LA. And you have a great presence in New York. Very core to the business is being local, right? And like having that kind of handoff delivery. But obviously to expand, you need to grow into new cities. And so I'm curious about how you guys think through allocating capital, either to expanding to new cities versus kind of growing your presence in an existing city, and what your kind of high level strategy is to growth there.
So I would say that we measure the dollars that are going out the door and what the impact is in terms of what's coming in the door. We don't do a lot of paid ads or anything like that. So most of the growth is from organic channels, and our job is to really kickstart those organic channels in a new market. A lot of those are still just the same scrappy techniques that we used when we had no money. So out in LA, we're putting on photo shoots, or we're going to the flea markets, or just talking to users and trying to do user interviews. There are definitely some things that we're doing in LA that are different now just because we have more brand awareness. So, hosting dinners with other companies or other influencers, things like that. But as far as how we think about allocating the capital, there's so much left to do in, Manhattan, Brooklyn, the surrounding areas of New York City as well. So we're still very focused here, but we want to make sure that we're appropriately growing in LA. And what we do is week by week basis, we're looking at the growth that we've been seeing in LA and talking about some of the opportunities there. And it's really just an open conversation of, is this something that we think would be worth it? At this point, we have a pretty good idea of what's going to add value and what's not. And if we don't feel like it's going to add value, we don't do it. And if it will, then we allocate capital to it. But I wouldn't say we have like a formula of 80-20 or 50-50 or anything like that. We just kind of look at, what's the expected return? Did we get that? If not, why? And then we just continue learning and adjusting moving forward.
That's interesting. Laura and I've interviewed on Partner Path the Belly founders before and spoke a lot about their kind of process of weighing what are the characteristics of a city that need to be in place in order to expand there. And it's a certain number of restaurants per capita or a certain population density. So it's interesting to think about.
We've talked to the Belly founders a couple times as well. They're very analytical in their approach to things. They're awesome. We do look at, as far as when we're choosing to launch in a new market, we do look at a number of things. So what we'll see is early on, a lot of shipping orders will start to go to that market. So the demand will see whether it's an influencer that posts about it or hear about it from a friend, and they'll start shipping things from closets in New York or LA or kind of wherever closets are uploaded throughout the US. And then we'll start to see the supply creep up, and we measure quality supply. So we track the top brands that we have on the platform as far as rentals, views, saves go. And once we have a certain threshold of quality supply in a market, we call it supply density or quality supply density, then we'll make the decisions to start allocating spend to a new market.
Were you mostly targeting funds like with that strategy or who had that investing history? Or were you mostly kind of targeting generalist funds, maybe with like certain individuals that had a track record there?
Pretty much anyone that would talk to us
Yeah.
is the answer to that. I think, you have your ideal list. And when we were putting that together, it was people with marketplace experience, because I think it's a unique business model that has unique problems that need to be solved, or just little intricacies that are kind of difficult. And it's great to have people that have experienced that before. We didn't look as much in e-commerce necessarily, but mostly just we looked at people that were involved in really cool, successful businesses that clearly had a lot of great operating experience. And that was the top of our list.
Yeah. Our investors, they all have amazing marketplace experience. So we're very, very lucky to have their expertise.
Yeah.
Would you do anything differently if you could go back?
That's a great question. I would say, I don't know, it all worked out. And we're pretty happy about it. One thing that we tried to raise a pre-seed round, and we're not able to. So we just adjusted it and raised a seed round. I think pre-seed's just difficult based off of the economics of pre-seed funds, and finding a lead there's just not that many people that lead pre-seed funds out there. So when we pivoted to raising a seed, we closed it fairly quickly. It was also just at an inflection point in our numbers where we started to see some pretty significant growth. The biggest thing, I guess, that I would have started doing earlier on is asking each investor you talk to, what are the numbers that you're measuring this business off of, so that next time you talk to them or when you reach out to them again, you can follow up with, you're tracking our net dollar retention. Our net dollar retention went from, X to Y or whatever it is. It's just a better way. First off, it's a great way to learn how investors are measuring your business. And then it's also a great way to follow up with them. So asking that question earlier on would have been good, but I don't know. We tried pretty hard to raise money for a while, and I don't know if there's things we could have done much better. It just kind of happened when our numbers started to look really good.
Yeah.
So it's pretty simple.
We also talk a lot about how we're very grateful that we didn't have money for a long time. And Brian kind of already alluded to that we, with no money or resources, we had to do everything from the deliveries door to door to our end customers to learning how to do the marketing and the growth and He's a self-taught developer. We literally didn't have money to hire a software engineer. And so Brian was like, I'm just going to learn how to code, which is great. Good for him.
Yeah.
But that helped us really learn our end user and consumer. And even when we were really small and starting to grow, we had a really sticky product. And I think it's because we were so focused on the end user experience, even from, it didn't matter if it was 10 people using the platform, like we were gonna make sure that they were having the best possible experience and the 10 people were sticking around. And then we were able to start growing that and scaling that and then hit a good inflection that allowed us to actually raise capital.
Yeah, I remember over 2 years ago, Julia and I were in a coffee shop in the East Village, and she had 7 Lululemon bags in her hand going to do the drop-offs. Yeah. And I mean, yeah, you guys have, and then experimenting with like couriers and how that would work. It's been an amazing journey. That kind of leads to, where do you see the next 6 months to 6 years for Pickle?
It's been a lot of fun. Definitely learned a lot and excited to continue to learn. Over the short term, continue to focus on the core markets that we're looking at right now. So the New York area as well as LA. We'll probably launch another market in the back half of 2024, most likely Miami, but we'll kind of see what the numbers are telling us. And then we're going to launch on a few college campuses later this summer, early fall as well. So we're really excited about that. And then as far as the long term, I think that there's a lot of growth opportunity for Pickle. I think that the international market will be amazing for us. The cities internationally are very highly populated. They are very dense as well. So it's a concept that'll work really well there. And then as we expand outside of, just cities and into more suburban areas, that'll be another interesting thing for us to do. Just based off some of the feedback we've received from people that DM us or reach out to support, there is demand in these suburban areas as well, which would be great. And obviously DoorDash, Uber Eats, all of those cover those areas pretty well. And then we plan to expand out past just clothing and accessories into other categories. So the goal is to do pretty much everything except for houses and cars, since those are being done pretty well right now. So a lot of opportunity for growth. We're really excited for it and can't wait for what's to come.
Yeah. And I think the last two topics I think would be really interesting to cover are logistics and sustainability. And I think they're very much intertwined. So maybe the way I want to phrase the question is, if you think of Pickle 10 years down the road and it's a massive success, and Laura and I definitely believe it will be, how much of that success would you attribute to the logistics part of the business?
I think the convenience aspect of it is fantastic, and it's what drives a lot of our growth. The two things we want to hear from customers are they have the best stuff and it's just so easy, and the logistics piece of that are what makes it just so easy. So I think it'll be an incredibly large part of it. It's something we focus on a lot and quite frankly need to invest more resources in focusing on the user experience there. So it'll be a huge part and continue to be. I'm really excited about all the innovation going into the space. 10 years from now, we might have drones delivering pickle deliveries. And I think that's, as far out as it may seem, it's very cool and it'll be really great for our business. So we're very excited about it.
And then obviously reusing clothing is much more sustainable than constantly buying new clothing. How important is sustainability to the mission of Pickle, and how has that kind of been a common thread as you've grown the business?
It's definitely important. I think the thing to always consider anytime the sustainability conversation comes up is you have to make sure that sustainability incentives are aligned with economic incentives. It's really interesting to look at companies like Shein, who are clearly not very sustainable, but also getting powered into a $70 billion valuation by Gen Z, which is typically the generation that's talking a lot about sustainability. So people really act with their wallets. And we know that, and it's great for us that the economic incentives are clearly there with the rental aspect as opposed to needing to purchase. And it's really great that the sustainability incentives are there for that as well. So I think sustainability, it's fantastic that we have that as part of our platform, and it's something that we'll continue to lean into and improve and all that. But the economic incentives definitely need to be there for people actually to adopt any sustainability practices, just from what we've seen, and I think some of the other companies out there as well.
Well, do you guys want to end with a quick fire round?
Sure.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, let's just do Brian, Julia. Brian, what is the best way to reach consumers?
Through their friends.
What is the go-to fashion trend right now?
Whatever's on Pickle, it's trending.
And then what about your favorite social media trend?
I love when something happens and then memes are just created nonstop for it. We'll go on Twitter and follow the memes.
What is your dream collaboration?
Couldn't actually happen, but with Carrie Bradshaw, that would be epic. But a realistic one, Blake Lively would be amazing. Her closet is epic.
She's just a few Subway stops down.
I know. And she's married to Ryan Reynolds, so I feel like there's a lot of opportunity there for women to spend ends and everything. You know?
Perfect.
He loves investing.
Yeah. We should call him up.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys.
Thank you guys.
Thank you so much. It was so fun.
It's been awesome.
Yeah.